We are just a few days removed from the conclusion of the 2025 NFL Draft, and that means that it's time to give out my annual draft grades. We're going to be doing all 32 teams, draft classes, breaking them down, grading them. If you only want to see my thoughts and my grades for your favorite team, we will have timestamps below. But if you are a football junkie and you want to watch the entirety of this, I appreciate you. You're a GOAT. Smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's dive into it. I'm going to start off with my draft grades for the teams in the AFC East, starting with the Buffalo Bills. They come in with a B+. I felt they had a really strong draft, especially with them going defensive heavy with their first couple of selections. Maxwell Harrison, one of the more underrated cornerbacks in this class, somebody who rose up the ranks throughout the draft process, really athletic, really fluid. I think that he has really good ball skills as well. Not only should he be an immediate contributor to this Bills defense, but I wouldn't be surprised if he quickly establishes himself as one of the better corners in the league. Then you get TJ Sanders out of South Carolina in round 2. South Carolina, to me, has the best strength and conditioning program in all of college football. All of the South Carolina guys tested out incredibly well at the combine. TJ Sanders is one of those kinds of defensive tackles where within 2-3 years from now, we could see him blossom into one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. Landon Jackson, he is really raw. I thought that he would have went a lot higher than what he did, but he reminds me a lot of Gregory Rousseau. Freakish athlete, but needs a little bit more polish. You will love for him to have a few more pass rush moves, but like we've seen Sean McDermott do with Gregory Rousseau, he has done a really good job developing him, and he has steadily improved every single year. And I expect Landon Jackson to follow in that similar career path. But if you don't get Gregory Rousseau out of Landon Jackson, then I could see you getting some AJ Epinesa out of him. At worst, he probably is a good rotational pass rusher. At best, you're looking at somebody who should be able to consistently give you 7-8 sacks a year. Deonte Walker, before the start of last college football season, he was projected to be a first-round pick in a lot of mock drafts, but he just was really underwhelming to watch. He got pushed around a lot in the run game. He didn't really bring too much from a pass rush standpoint neither, but with how good the Bills are at developing interior defensive linemen, they definitely could get the most out of Deonte Walker. The athleticism is there. The traits are there. It's just he was just incredibly underwhelming for a strange reason. Maybe he just melded in when Kentucky just ended up sucking. But another pick that I like is Dorian Strong. He won't be somebody that's going to come in and be an immediate contributor to the Bills defense. He more so would be a special teams guy, but I could see him within the span of 2 seasons from now turning into a pretty good starter. Overall, this was a really strong draft by the Buffalo Bills. That's why I give them a B+. But you just would have loved to see them find some more instant impact kind of guys outside of Maxwell Harrison and TJ Sanders. A good amount of these dudes are going to be guys that probably blossom into solid starters within 2-3 seasons from now. That's just wishful thinking. The Miami Dolphins, I loved what they did in the draft this year. Their first 3 picks they spent on improving the trenches, which is something they absolutely had to do with how they have just melted apart during the second half of the season under Mike McDaniel the last couple of years. And they've been arguably the softest football team in the National Football League. Well, you add Kenneth Grant and you put him next to Zach Sealer. A huge reason why Miami's defensive line kind of took a step back is due to the loss of Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins, not only was he really good against the run, but he was turning into a really dominant pass rusher. Kenneth Grant, I feel may not be Christian Wilkins per se, but he will be an anchor on that run defense. Pass rush, maybe you can see him turning into a 7, 6 sack guy, which is really good for a defensive tackle. Defensive tackles normally don't give you a lot of pass rush production unless you're getting like a DeForest Buckner or Aaron Donald. You get 6, 7 sacks out of Kenneth Grant a year. He's one of the better defensive tackles in the league if you get that. Then you get one of the Samoans out of Arizona. You can never go wrong drafting one of these Hawaiian offensive linemen. They normally end up turning into gold. Jordan Phillips, you get him in the 5th round. Another depth guy to add on that defensive line. And this is when this year's draft for Miami kind of started to make no sense to me. Jason Marshall, he has had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, fall off out of any prospect that I've seen over these last couple of years. His freshman season, he was all world. But ever since then, it's just been decline. Injuries have been somewhat of a factor also. I don't really think you're going to get too much out of Jason Marshall. I do love the selection of Ollie Gordon the second. He was the Doak Walker Award 2 seasons ago. Really good size, has pretty good burst. He's going to be the Thunder to Devon A-Chain. You'll have like a Lightning Thunder running back duo. You did draft a running back last year, Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. Ollie Gordon's better than him. Don't really trip on the production that Ollie Gordon had last year. I know the numbers look really bad, but you got to judge him based off the tape that he put on film. And 2023, that's when Oklahoma State actually had somewhat of a good offensive line. Last year, their offensive line was dog shit. They were the worst team in their conference. And then you get Quinn Ewers in round 7. If you get the Quinn Ewers that we saw in that first quarter against Alabama in 2022, he could be a really good backup and a potential starter for you if you just get tired of Tua just going down with injuries. But he should be a really good backup. The thing with Quinn Ewers is he just didn't live up to the potential that he had when he had all this hype coming out of high school, pretty much one of the highest rated high school recruits all time. But he's not garbage. In a system like Mike McDaniel, where he's scheming guys open, is quarterback friendly, Quinn Ewers should be pretty productive in this offense. I could see him beating out Zach Wilson right away for the backup quarterback job. So the Miami Dolphins, I give them a B+ for their draft this year. The New York Jets absolutely knocked this year's draft out of the park. Not only are they getting an A+, but they had one of the best draft classes this year. You get Mimbu, who some would tell you was the best offensive tackle in this class, over Will Campbell. Understandable, really good size. Oh, you talk about a freakish athlete. Oh my goodness. The Jets' offensive line should be one of the better units in the league. They have invested a lot on the O-line, from Joe Tippmann to Elijah Vera Tucker to Alou Fashanu. Getting Mimbu should now piece this unit all together perfectly. Mason Taylor, one of the more underrated prospects in this draft. He wasn't talked about enough at LSU. He is the son, or not the son, but he is related to Jason Taylor. To get him in round 2 was surprising. I thought he probably would have fell a little bit further due to him not really receiving a lot of attention. But he also could come in and have an immediate impact for you. You normally don't see tight ends make a lot of noise in a rookie season. One of the hardest transitions to make as a tight end going from college to the NFL is the amount of the playbook that you have to learn, from pass blocking, run blocking. Then you also got to understand the routes that you have to run. But he's going to be a pretty productive player for New York. Maybe he doesn't make a lot of noise as a rookie, but 2-3 years down the road, I expect him to be a top 5 tight end in the game. He has really good hands. He's pretty good after the catch. He's a really solid tight end prospect. And he got overlooked by Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. Azaria Thomas, you get him in the 3rd round out of Florida State. His 40 time really killed him. But if he was able to run a faster 40, I thought that he probably would have been a 1st round pick. Really smooth corner. He was the only Florida State player on that defense that you actually could pay attention to, who wasn't getting cooked constantly. Florida State was an embarrassment last year. They went 2-10 after winning the ACC championship the year before, and everybody on that defense looked like they had melded in outside of Azaria Thomas. I know that the lateral speed, the vertical speed is going to be a question. Is he going to be able to keep up with some of the faster receivers in the league? But if you can overlook that, man, with Aaron Glenn being a defensive-minded coach, he should be able to get him on the field at some point this year. Guys like Richard Sherman didn't test incredibly well. He is pretty long, lengthy, with good size. I don't like the selection of Arian Smith. I felt this was a reach, one of the few reaches that the Jets made in this drive. I wouldn't touch any receiver that played on Georgia last year. That was a unit that just had butterfingers for hands. He is really fast. He could be a good kick punt returner for you, but I don't know how you're going to get him on the field. His hands, his drops are a severe question mark. And I felt he more so was like a day 3, like round 6, round 7 kind of guy. Malachi Moore, really, really good safety. I think he's really good in run support. His coverage can be hit or miss at times, but really passionate about the game, plays with a high level of intensity. Then you get Francisco Magoa from my Miami Hurricanes. He could be a good backup linebacker. I don't really know if he'll turn into a good starter. Miami's defense, if you don't recall, was the worst in college football. It was the reason why Cam Ward got robbed of making it to the CFP. Maybe he'll be a good special teamer. Maybe he could be developed and molded into a serviceable starter linebacker. But at this point, round 5, you're just looking for a good backup options, maybe somebody who can become a good starter for you down the road. Tyler Barron, really, really good. Okay, I thought he was one of the better pass rushers in this class. When Miami got him last year, he made a pretty big impact on that defense. He's not really good against the run to me, but he is able to get after the quarterback. So as a rookie, maybe you put him in on a few packages, 3rd down situations, obvious passing situations is probably where you'll want him in the game, ideally. But to get somebody like him in round 5, I felt was one of the bigger steals in the draft, only due to the upside that he has. I feel if Aaron Glenn can do a good job developing him, you're getting somebody that has high upside to give you around like 8-9 sacks a season, and he's been pretty productive throughout his college career. He has played 5 seasons. He played 4 in Tennessee. He finished last season with Miami. He had 6 sacks in 2023, 5.5 last year at Miami. I think his run defense can use a lot of improvement, as I stated earlier, but overall, the potential definitely is there for him to become a really serviceable pass rusher for New York on the defensive line that already does have a lot of pass rush talent, from Quinnen Williams to Will Donald. Lastly, I got the New England Patriots. They also had one of the best drafts this year. You draft Will Campbell 4th overall. You could say that Mimbu was better, but with the character that Will Campbell has, from a technical standpoint, from footwork, hand placement, I feel he's really good. He should come in right away and at least be above average left tackle for you. I'm not really concerned about the short arms. A lot has been made out about that. And, arm length does matter, but overall, you're getting a really good player, a hard worker, and I bet on the character when it comes to Will Campbell. He's a leader. He was a captain at LSU. Then you get Travion Henderson in the 2nd round out of Ohio State. one of the best overall players from this draft. He was the third running back on my board when it came to my top 10 running back rankings. And the gap between Travion Henderson and Amarion Hampton, Ashton Genty is not really that big. You know, Ashton Genty's here, Travion Henderson and Amarion Hampton, they're like right here. He can do everything. He's probably the best pass block, not even probably, he is the best pass blocking running back in this draft. He also has really good vision. He's explosive. He has elite acceleration. You give him the football, he goes 0 to 100 instantly. He can break tackles. This is a 3-down back. And don't be surprised if you see him dethroning Ramondre Stevenson as soon as we get to the conclusion of training camp, because he can just do it all. There's no reason why you should ever think of taking Travion Henderson off the field unless you're just giving him a breather to catch his wind. Kyle Williams, one of the bigger diamond in the rough wide receiver prospects in the draft this year. Really good route runner. At Washington State, he was the only NFL caliber player that they had on that team. He should compete for a starting job right away in New England. You give Drake May, a really good route runner that does a good job of getting open. And one of the more underrated traits that gets overlooked about receivers is IQ. Kyle Williams was one of those receivers that just seems to always know how to find the holes and zone coverage. You get Jarrett Wilson, safety out of the University of Georgia. You can never go wrong drafting interior offensive lineman from Georgia. Don't know if he will be a plug-and-play starter for New England right out the gate, but eventually you would think he should turn into a pretty productive starter. Maybe not a Pro Bowl caliber guy, but I can see Jarrett Wilson being a 7-8 year starter in this league. Then you get Andreas Borgalis in the 6th round, one of the best kickers in all of college football, very accurate. You don't see a lot of weird misses from him. This was a great draft class that Mike Vrabel and this front office put together with this new regime. This is a great way to start things off. I felt last year's draft by New England was pretty overwhelming. They reached for a lot of guys. This year, you got really good value. You got guys that probably should have gone a lot earlier. I thought Gerald Wilson probably would have been a 2nd rounder, but great draft class that the Patriots put together. And these are my draft grades for all the teams in the AFC East. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Now let's move on to my draft grades for the AFC North. Starting with the Cincinnati Bengals, they had the worst draft class out of every team in the NFL this year. This is another underwhelming draft class the Bengals have put together. Starting off with Shamar Stewart with your 1st round pick. We knew somebody was going to draft this guy. When you go 4 years with only 4.5 sacks, I really question if you ever going to be able to develop any pass rush moves. Not only was Shamar Stewart one of the worst pass rushers in this draft, but his run defense isn't that great neither. But you're banking on the athleticism and the physical traits, being able to mold him into somewhat of a productive pass rusher. But with how you missed on Myles Murphy, he kind of had a similar profile to Shamar Stewart. If you couldn't develop him, I don't know how you're going to be able to develop Shamar Stewart. And what's funny is when he had that interaction after his press conference with Joe Burrow, at the end of it, Joe Burrow was like, let's get some sacks this year. You ain't going to be getting too many sacks out of Shamar Stewart unless he just has a Rashawn Gary kind of career arc. Rashawn Gary, he didn't have a lot of production coming out of Michigan, and he's blossomed into the most underrated pass rusher in the league. Unless you get that out of Shamar Stewart, this is a really bad pick. Demetrius Knight should be an instant starter for Cincinnati. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get significant snaps as a rookie. Barrett Carter also is a pretty good linebacker as well. But I think the best pick the Bengals have made from this draft class was getting Jalen Rivers. I am a little bit biased because he does come from the city of Jacksonville. I'm always going to support my 904 brethren. Really big, bulky, not super athletic, but he should be able to come in and let's say he doesn't work out at tackle. You can definitely move him to guard. And he looks more like he'll be a better guard than he would be a tackle, only because you normally want a more athletic guy on the edge protecting your quarterback. A guy like Jalen Rivers, I think he would better be suited if you move him to guard. And with how the offensive line has performed by most standards, it's surprising that Joe Burrow has been as good as what he's been, despite the offensive line being pretty disappointing with the amount of money the Bengals have invested into that unit. So you get Jalen Rivers. If he doesn't work out at tackle, you can definitely move him to guard. The Cleveland Browns. This is the best draft that the Browns have had in a very long time. I can't recall ever saying the Browns had an A-plus worthy draft. You trade out of the second overall pick, you get a first rounder for next year's draft, which that kind of boosts up their grade a little bit. They did get a pretty hefty return for the Jaguars, getting Travis Hunter. Mason Graham, fifth overall. I've kind of soured on him a little bit. The more tape I watched of him, the more I was like, okay, you're a good run stopper. Nobody's denying that. But I don't know if you'll ever turn into a dominant pass rusher from that defensive tackle spot. And when you draft a D tackle this high in the draft, you're kind of looking for that. You're not looking for a bona fide run stuffer. You're looking for somebody that not only is good against the run, but can give you 8, maybe 10 kind of sacks, 10 sacks as a defensive tackle. So, it's not a bad pick. I am banking on him becoming a really good D tackle, but he's good against the run, but his pass rush, you just expect more from a D tackle that gets drafted this high. Then you get a really good linebacker out of UCLA who could be a potential plug-and-play guy. But these next 3 selections that the Browns made after this UCLA linebacker selection were my favorites. You get Quinshon Judkins, not incredibly explosive, but he's a bruiser. I mean, you talk about somebody that's going to put that shoulder down and just absolutely destroy guys in the open field. Quinshon Judkins is that guy. I was impressed with how fast he ran at the combine. He exceeded my expectations, and he got better throughout the course of the season for Ohio State. The first half of the season, I felt he was incredibly disappointing, but the second half, especially during Ohio State's playoff run, he just turned into an absolute tank, and he should immediately command 100 carries or more during his rookie season. You also get Dylan Sampson in round 4. You could get a 1-2 punch out of Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. Jerome Ford is still there, so he'll probably get a good amount of carries, but I could see both of these guys phasing out Jerome Ford. Maybe Quinshon Judkins probably gets more touches as a rookie than what Dylan Sampson does, but Dylan Sampson immediately should get, a handful of carries because he is the most explosive back on the roster at the moment. Dylan Gabriel, getting him in the 3rd round was a little bit confusing. I felt this was a bad fit for him. He doesn't have a strong arm. He's not really a great athlete. He would more be better suited in a dome kind of environment. And, he threw a few hospital balls last season as well, but he has had a very productive college career. He's played at UCF, Oklahoma, Oregon. So if you're balling out in 3 different stops with several different offensive coordinators, you should translate well to the National Football League. Getting Harold Fenton Jr. is the best pick that the Browns made in this draft. He was getting incredibly nitpicked for somebody that just dominated against Penn State. Penn State could not stop Harold Fenton. Yes, he is a lot slower than what you would have thought, but watching him on film, he has faster game speed than what we saw in the 40-yard dash. Not a great blocker, But as a receiver, you can move him around. He can be a big slot guy for you. Kevin Stefanski should have a lot of fun with Harold Fannin Jr. And if he doesn't work out as a tight end, he could follow down the same path that Kyle Juszczyk did, converting from tight end to fullback. Getting Shedeur Sanders, though, was the biggest steal of the draft. I wanted the Steelers to get him so bad to the point where I'm strongly considering no longer being a Steelers fan. I feel Shedeur is going to turn into a really good quarterback. At worst, you get Kirk Cousins. At best, you're getting what could be a top 5 quarterback in the league and a QB that can finally get the Browns in the Super Bowl contention. This was an A-plus draft for Cleveland. They didn't really reach for anybody in particular outside of Dylan Gabriel, who could have been available around the 5th, 6th round. Getting Shedeur, though, in round 5, who was graded out by most to be a second-round talent. If you get Andy Dalton out of Shedeur, that's a win. That's good enough to, give you a shot to make a deep playoff run with how well the Browns have constructed their roster. They don't have a bad team. If they can just get some competent quarterback play this year, let's say Shedeur does beat out Joe Flacco, maybe they could get into the playoffs as a 7 seed. The accuracy is there. He's a good decision maker. He didn't really put the ball in harm's way during his 2 seasons at Colorado. And plus, he has several years of experience. Normally, that results in at least having a serviceable quarterback as your starter. I would be really shocked if Shedeur doesn't end up becoming a halfway decent quarterback in the league. The Baltimore Ravens, like always, they dominated the draft this year. They had the best draft class in terms of, with all the picks they had, finding at least 5, 6 guys that can turn into capable starters for you. Malachi Starks is a freak athlete. I won't forget that interception that he had early during the season last year against Clemson. Really rangy, has good instincts. He just flies to the football, really good in coverage. He was the best safety in this draft, in my opinion. Then you get Mike Green in the 2nd round, who most draft analysts had a 1st-round grade on, but due to the essay cases that he had from high school and recently, that bumped him out of the 1st round. I could see Mike Green immediately having an instant impact on this Ravens defense. Maybe he ends up having 10 sacks for the Ravens right out the gate. Really explosive plays with a lot of violence. Emory Jones Jr., right tackle from LSU. You get him in round 3. He should be pushing for that starting right tackle spot. I can't pronounce the name of the guy you had starting for you at right tackle last year, but Emory Jones Jr., I thought he would have been a 1st-round pick. He was talked about as a 1st-round pick for the majority of last season. I don't know what really went wrong for him throughout this draft process. I'm not going to act like I'm some kind of offensive line expert, but I do know that he was a pretty good player at LSU. He held his own. There is a gap between him and Will Campbell. He did have his moments where, he kind of did get bull rushed a few times, but I felt with these first 3 picks, you're getting guys that should be guaranteed starters and really good ones at that, especially Malachi Starks. Carson Vincent, you can move him to guard, pretty athletic, really great size. But my favorite pick out of this class by Baltimore was getting LaJohntay Western. I was watching a lot of him during my time when I was attending Florida Atlantic University, and throughout his last couple of years at FAU, the offense pretty much ran through him. Then he goes to Colorado, balls out despite having to share targets with Travis and Jimmy Horn Jr. He's a fantastic route runner, has really good hands. He's great after the catch. Not only are you going to get somebody that can push for immediate playing time, but he's also going to be a really good kick, punt returner for you as well. And he's a Florida boy. Lamar, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, they're all from Florida, so you keep that South Florida connection going. This was an incredible drive by the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't even talk about Tyler Loop. You found your potential Diddy Tucker replacement or Deshaun Tucker replacement if shit really hits the fan with all of the legal stuff that he has going on. You've walked away from this draft with all of these damn picks that you had, with about what, 6, 7 guys that could be starters for you. And if they do become starters, Pro Bowl caliber at that, this was the best draft class in the NFL this year. The Ravens always draft really good. They always find good steals around the middle portions of the draft. Once you get to round 4 and from there, you're just looking for guys that can be good backups, contribute on special teams. But the Ravens, man, they just walked away with a draft class that possibly could catapult them to being a Super Bowl contender for another 4 or 5 years when these guys get into their second, third years in the league. This is a draft class that gives me vibes of when Ozzie Newsome had that 2018 draft class. Remember, he not just got Lamar, but he also got Orlando Brown in the middle portion of the draft, Mark Andrews. This draft is reminiscent of that. Eric DeCosta was cooking this year. And lastly, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm giving them a B+. It wasn't a bad draft. It just really irritated me that they did not draft Shedeur Sanders. I feel Shedeur Sanders has all the makings of a franchise quarterback. Getting Will Howard in the 6th round, it's not bad. He kind of embodies what the city of Pittsburgh is. Hard-nosed, blue-collared, hard-working. That's what Will Howard is. He's not flashy. For a guy of his size, you would expect for him to have a hose, a cannon for an arm, but not really. But he's tough, a willing runner. And I think, a year behind Aaron Rodgers, we'll see. I'm not saying that he's going to turn into a solid starter, but, maybe sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for a year, learning behind him, he could turn into a capable starter, but I'm not really banking on it. I do love the selection of Derek Harmon, and my condolences go out to him for losing his mom. It's a blessing that the last memory that his mom had on this earth was witnessing her son get drafted. All of the hard work that she witnessed him put in all the years finally paid off. It's just heartbreaking to lose your mom in that fashion. As soon as you get drafted, she passes away. I couldn't imagine the feeling that he's having right now, what he's going through. So my prayers, condolences go out to him, but he's a monster. And I was initially upset when the Steelers drafted him over Shedeur before he ended up sliding all the way to the 5th round. But to be honest with you, the Steelers probably got the best defensive tackle in the draft. I was reading scouting reports for Derek Harmon. They compared him to Cam Hayward. And a lot of sites said that he's the perfect Steelers-Ravens kind of player. If you watch him at Oregon, he's blowing guys up. Not only was he good against the run, but he was good at getting after the quarterback. That's why I say Derek Harmon was the best D tackle in this class, in my opinion. After watching the film, and look, I loved Walter Nolan a lot, but Derek Harmon, there's not a single thing that he can't do, and he immediately should be starting on the Steelers' defensive line. He's going to instantly improve the run defense. And with the athleticism that he has, this guy coming at you is just downright scary. He had 5 sacks in his final season at Oregon. He possibly could be a 10 double-digit sack guy as a defensive tackle. And if you get that, you're looking at an all-pro level player. And him learning after Cam Hayward, somebody that he has kind of somewhat modeled his game after, who he has looked up to, is going to be great for him. Caleb Johnson, I don't hate the pick, and I don't hate him as a player, but he's not as explosive as what you would hope for. He kind of gives me somewhat of Najee Harris vibes, but he's really good after contact, has really good vision, and when he gets into the open field, he can make guys miss. He's going to run through a lot of defensive backs and corners. You see Caleb Johnson coming up in the open field. A lot of DBs are going to be making business decisions when they see him. He's hard to bring down, and you're not just going to bring him down with one or two guys. It normally takes an army of guys to get him down. So I'm not completely upset. I was just hoping for a more explosive back. I would have loved for the Steelers to get Woody Marks, but you already got Jalen Warren who kind of takes that role. But I just wanted a more explosive back. But Caleb Johnson should be really good. And also, he was training with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what he was doing training with Aaron Rodgers. You're a running back. So maybe he possesses some really good pass catching ability as well. Jack Sawyer in round 4, he embodies the kind of character that the Steelers are looking for, like Will Howard, hard worker, high character guy. He had a tremendous last season at Ohio State. He just has a knack for making plays. You don't really care about the athleticism. He's not the most athletic. He's not the most bendiest of guys, but if you're just looking for a playmaker who's just going to find ways to impact the game, no matter if it's on special teams or being a rotational guy, Jack Sawyer is your guy. He's tough. I think he's really good against the run. I think he'll make a living as a run stopper. But he had a really productive career at Ohio State. He got better every single year. He went from a 3-sack guy as a freshman to ending his final season, not just a national champion, but with 9 sacks. So with Alex Highsmith, he battled through some injuries last year. If he has some injury issues again, or let's say TJ Watt has to miss some time, he could be a good backup and possibly turn into a really productive pass rusher. The Steelers do a really good job of finding these pass rushers who, even if they don't end up being Pro Bowl or all pro level guys, they at least can be solid contributors for Pittsburgh. And overall, this was a good draft by Pittsburgh. Not a great draft, but a good draft where you stick to your roots, you improve the biggest area of need, which was the defensive line. You get more depth. You get guys that are going to be really good against the run, which was a big bugaboo the Steelers had late during the season. When they ended up falling apart, teams were just running all over them. I'll never forget during that wild card loss against the Baltimore Ravens, before halftime, Lamar's just running around, just making the Steelers defense look foolish before he threw that touchdown before halftime. Getting Derek Harmon and Jack Sawyer, yeah, I don't see that shit happening again. So I get the Steelers a B+. So this is it for my AFC North draft grades. All right, I want to give my draft grades for the AFC South. And I'm going to be honest, this division was really underwhelming in this draft this year. The Indianapolis Colts, I gave them a C+. Tyler Warren, great pickup. This was the guy they were eyeballing at the start of the draft process. And there was some concerns that they might not have even been able to get him without trading up. Well, he fell perfectly in their laps. He can do it all. Not only does he play tight end, you can play him at fullback, you can play him in a slot. But with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones playing quarterback this year, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tyler Warren playing a little bit of QB in his own right. He can throw as well. He's just a Swiss Army knife. And Shane Steichen is going to have a lot of fun just moving him around in this offense, creating mismatches for opposing defenses. I had him as my tight end 1 over Colts and Loveland. I was a little shocked to see teams higher on Colts and Loveland than they were on Tyler Warren. But Tyler Warren, the knock on him is that he's not as athletic. Well, I'm not going to say as athletic, but he's not as fast as what Colts and Loveland is. Colts and Loveland is kind of like great value Brock Bowers in a sense. Tyler Warren more so. You put him in a slot, he's not just going to be blowing you away with how fast he moves as a tight end, but I felt he had faster game speed than what people allege with his 40 time and whatnot. This is an overall great football player. My only knock on this pick is I don't trust Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson are going to be good enough to get him the damn ball. With how Anthony Richardson just sells 5 and 10 yard passes, I'm worried Tyler Warren won't be properly utilized until the Colts actually get a freaking quarterback underneath center. But, if Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson can hit the open guy this year, Tyler Warren just adds to an already stacked offense. You got A.D. Mitchell, you got Michael Pittman, you have Josh Downs, you just have a bevy of riches. If the Colts can get some serviceable quarterback play this year, they definitely should be a playoff team. You get JTT. I thought he would have been a first round pick, really productive pass rusher out of Ohio State. He's going to have a really good career. I see him being a 10-year guy in this league, probably ends up having a really good rookie season. He made he had a game against Michigan 2 years ago in 2023 where he just completely took over that game. Well, it wasn't Michigan. It was Penn State. My fault. My apologies for that. But he just took over that Penn State game. He was causing fumbles. I think he had an interception as well. That was one of the best defensive performances that I have ever seen out of a defensive player. I mean, he was just making his presence felt all over in that game. And the Colts have invested a lot into the interior of their defensive line. So getting JTT, even if you don't plan on starting him, he'll just be a really good rotational guy. And then eventually, going into his third, fourth season, you eventually should see him turn into a defensive end that probably gives you around 8 or more sacks consistently every single season. And then outside of those two picks, Tyler Warren and JTT, I wasn't the biggest fan of this draft. DJ Giddens is cool. Jalen Travis, he's solid. But Riley Leonard in the 6th round, he's no different from Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. I guess Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard have this infatuation with tough, mobile quarterbacks that are better runners than they are throwers of the football. Maybe you plan on using Riley Leonard in somewhat of a Taysom Hill role where maybe he plays a little bit of tight end for you. Maybe you want to play him at fullback, but I didn't really understand the selection of Riley Leonard. That was a head scratch to me. And this draft for Indianapolis, where you should have drafted another safety, another corner. That was another big issue that they had on that defense last year. That secondary couldn't cover a soul at times, it seemed like. I thought they would have at least went with a safety instead of a guy like Riley Leonard in the 6th round. And I don't want to nitpick, a day 3 pick to death, but I mean, come on, man. You definitely could have used some more secondary help. So I give them a C+. The Jaguars had the best draft in the AFC South, in my opinion, this year. Yeah, they did give up a lot to get Travis Hunter, but you're getting a two-way player. He's mainly going to play offense, but he's going to play probably about 30% of the Jaguar snaps on defense. And that's enough for Travis Hunter to have a major impact with the ball skills he has, which is out of this world. He has the best ball skills out of any prospect that has ever entered the NFL draft. How he can just play 2 zones in one or 2 zones at once, it seems like. If you watch that TCU game from 2 years ago, he had an interception in the red zone where he was playing the flash and he just comes back out of his zone. He has a high football IQ. He just understands what offenses are trying to do. He has a good feel for how routes are developing because he plays receiver as well. So him playing receiver is what makes him such a great corner. But he's just as good as a receiver as he is corner, which is why the Jazz gave us so much to get him. He's going to have the biggest impact out of any player in the league that doesn't play quarterback. He can play both ways. I don't know how they're going to use him, and particularly on defense. Are you just going to, play him 30% of the snaps every single game? Or are you going to have like a design snap count for Travis Hunter where you're going to give him 30, 40 snaps? Or depending on the team that you play, let's say you play a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, are you going to play him more at corner than what you would if you play a team like the Browns that probably won't have good quarterback play this year? I don't really know, but having him on offense with Brian Thomas Jr. automatically gives the Jaguars one of the best receiving duos in the league. It gives Trevor another weapon to throw the ball to. I have nothing against the Jaguars trading up for Travis Hunter. This is a trade that they had to make. It's going to bring some energy back into this fan base. People are going to want to watch him play, so you're going to put more fans in the seats. Then you get Caleb Renaissance. I know I butchered that. My apologies to him if he's watching this. I doubt it, but he comes out of Tulane. He should be a really good slot corner. Pretty good size. He's a pretty good tackler. This is what the Jaguars need. I wouldn't be surprised to see him starting day one for Jacksonville with the issues that they've had in the secondary these past couple of years. He should be a immediate plug-and-play guy. Brayshaw Tuden, he has really impressive film at Virginia Tech. Really good speed, but also really good after contact. Jack Kaiser was really productive at Notre Dame. Good tackler. I don't think he's that great in coverage, but he just has a really good feel for just getting to the football. It seemed like every time you watch Notre Dame's defense, Jack Kaiser either was in making the play, making the tackle, or he was somewhere around the proximity of where the play ended. He reminds me a little bit of Paul Posluszny. Now, he's not built like Paul Posluszny. You know, Paul Posluszny had like muscles on top of muscles. He had like neck muscles. Jack Kaiser isn't built like that. But his playing style, though, reminds me a lot of Paul Posluszny. And if you're an OG Jaguars fan, you remember how good Paul Posluszny was. I give the Jaguars a B+. This was a pretty solid draft. This is the best draft that they've had. Shoot, I can't recall the last time the Jaguars had a draft class as good as this one, honestly. With how Trent Baalke has just whiffed on drafts the last couple of years, it's just refreshing to see a draft where you're not going heavy on defensive linemen, trying to add on weight to them weirdly. You address pretty much every single need that you had. I don't really think you needed to get another running back in the 7th round, but that's a 7th round pick, so I'm not going to nitpick that. This was a good draft, the best draft in the AFC South. The Houston Texans, at first, I was going to give them a C+, but you get Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, two guys that instantly should come in and be really productive as rookies. Jaden Higgins, behind Travis Hunter and Ted McMillan, he was the 3rd best receiver in the Big Ten. And then you get Woody Marks in the 4th round. This is what made me change my tune on the Texans draft. Because I was like, okay, you're going receiver heavy. You draft Jalen Smith. You don't need another damn corner. You have not just the best secondary in the league, but you got a lot of depth at that position. You've drafted enough corners, enough defensive backs as it is. You could have used that on another offensive lineman. So that kind of irritated me a little bit. But you get Woody Marks in the 4th round. Woody Marks was my favorite running back in this draft. Great vision. Not necessarily great after contact, but very elusive. But what separates him from the other running backs in this class is how great he is catching the football out of the backfield. He initially started his career playing for Mississippi State under Mike Leach. If you know or remember Mike Leach, unfortunately before he passed away, RIP to the Pirate, to play in his offense, you got to be a receiver pretty much. And he's like Mississippi State's all-time leader in career receptions. With the versatility that he has, not just as a runner, but catching the ball out of the backfield to the point where you can line him up in the slot, or if you line him up wide and you get him matched up against a linebacker, that's an easy mismatch. He immediately is going to be RB2 behind Joe Mixon. And this just isn't one of those running backs that, you know, is only going to come in when Joe Mixon needs a break. Like, no, Woody Marks is going to get some significant playing time for the Texans this year. Joe Mixon doesn't catch the ball as well as what Woody Marks does. Woody Marks, with the skill set he has catching the ball, he's the equivalent to a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 when he's on the field for you. What brought this draft back down for me after I was about to give them a B+, it's a selection of Graham Mertz. Once again, with how bad your offensive line was, you should have been using these picks that you used on Graham Mertz and Jalen Smith on adding some more depth on that offensive line. You should have at least drafted 2 more offensive linemen. You drafted one in the 2nd round. Cool. Draft 2 more. three is better than one, it's a numbers game. When your offensive line is just sucking water through a golden hose like the Texans did last year, you need all the offensive linemen that you could have gotten. Taking a tight end in the 7th round, you should have been drafting another offensive lineman. You should have went 3-4 deep on the offensive line. It just made no sense to me. That's what just irritated me about the Texans drive. That's why I gave them a B minus. You can argue that I'm being a little bit too harsh, but am I really? CJ Stroud is your franchise quarterback. Protect your eventual $70 million, $65 million investment, which is what he's going to be making when he ends up getting that contract extension. It just confused me, man. It just really did. Get some more damn offensive linemen. You already have corners. What do you need Graham Mertz for? Graham Mertz should have been a UDFA. He's coming off a season-ending injury, for crying out loud. What the hell were the Houston Texans thinking? B minus. You can be mad at me all you want to if you're a Texans fan, but come on. The Tennessee Titans, I'm giving them a C+. Cam Ward is going to be an absolute stud. But, outside of getting him, man, I was really, really upset with the direction the Titans chose to go after that. Chimere DK in the 4th round, he's nothing but a bona fide deep threat. He didn't really do too much at Florida. You could have gotten Chimere DK in round 6 or 7, but you did get Alec Oyermanner. And I love this selection. This is one of the biggest steals in the draft. Alec Oyermanner, if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football or you are looking for a undervalued rookie wide receiver who can break out like a Ladd McConkey did last year, Alec Oyermanner is that guy. I would never forget how he just completely destroyed Travis Hunter 2 years ago when Stanford played Colorado. Travis Hunter was just getting bullied and pushed around like Alec Manner was bullying him for his lunch money pretty much. You also got Xavier Restrepo as a UDFA. Alec Oyermanner is going to compete for immediate playing time, and he's the perfect fit for the skill set that Cam Ward has. He likes to be really aggressive, pushing the football down the seams. Alec Oyermanner, he's going to win those 50-50 matchups. But he also has pretty good enough speed where, he can be an elite deep threat. He's not just a 50-50 ball guy. He also can be a good possession receiver. Alec Oyermanner, I had a 2nd round grade on him. And you got him in the 4th round. I thought he definitely would have went a lot earlier than that. But outside of getting Alec Oyermanner, I didn't really love too much of the other selections that the Titans made. I felt they probably could have used some more help on the offensive line. You got Khalil Mullins at running back in the 6th round. He is a converted linebacker. When you already have Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, I felt they could have did a little bit more on defense. Probably could have went a little bit heavy at linebacker. You didn't draft the linebacker at all after you got rid of Kenneth Murray. I just wasn't a big fan of what the Titans did in this draft. You were reaching for guys like Chimere DK. Kevin Winston Jr. should be a pretty good pickup for you. Really good against the run. His coverage is a little bit hit or miss at times, but I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of their 2nd round pick. That's why I kind of been, eluding it. But he can be pretty good for them. I just felt you could have got him a little bit later. Overall, this was a pretty underwhelming draft by Tennessee, but getting Oyermanner definitely makes it look a lot better. And Chimere DK, I don't think he will be unplayable, but you could have got him a lot later in the draft. So these are my draft grades for the AFC South. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Your grades for all of the AFC South teams. Now it's time to give my draft grades for the AFC West. This division, overall, every team knocked their draft out of the park. The Denver Broncos, I give them an A-. Jahdae Barron, even with Will Johnson, if you ignore the medicals, there was a good contingent that had Jahdae Barron as cornerback 1. He has scheme versatility. He's good if you primarily play a lot of man, if you primarily play a lot of zone. He's good either or. He's a willing tackler. You don't find a lot of cornerbacks that want to get their hands dirty, that want to tackle. You get a lot of ankle biters. You don't get that with Jahdae Barron. He has no problem coming down and laying the boom on you. RJ Harvey is a human bowling ball. How he just bounces off guys and he gets downhill really fast. He probably could be the most productive rookie running back in the NFL this year. I know you got Travion Henderson, you got Ashton Genty, but behind this brick wall that the Denver Broncos have in the offensive line, he should be really good this year. Pat Bryant was my favorite pick that the Broncos made this year. Not just because he is from the 904, but I felt he was incredibly underrated. Yes, he's not a burner. I think he ran like 4.58, 4.6, something like that. But speed isn't what makes Pat Bryant great. What makes Pat Bryant really good is that he's a really physical wide receiver. He's not going to get jammed up on the line of scrimmage. He has really good releases off the line. He's a pretty good route runner for somebody of his size that has his kind of skill set, but he also can win those 50-50 balls. Along with Courtland Sutton, Pat Bryant could emerge as the Denver Broncos wide receiver 2. And you did have Devon Vele, who made a good amount of plays last year alongside of a few other guys. You still do have Troy Franklin, but I believe he right now is the second most talented team on the Broncos roster. I know he hasn't taken a single NFL snap yet, but with what he did at Illinois isn't necessarily known for producing a lot of good receivers, especially with their head coach being more of an old school run first kind of guy. But for Pat Bryant to have the production that he had his years at Illinois in a run heavy scheme, it's a testament to how good of a receiver he is. With Bo Nix entering year 2, throwing to Pat Bryant, don't be surprised if he ends up having like 700-800 yards and about 7-8 touchdowns in his rookie year. Then you get a punter in the 6th round. You can never go wrong getting a punter in day 3 of the draft. You get Savion Jones, who could turn into a pretty good rotational guy for you. Overall, you just got pretty good value. You didn't really reach for anybody. I had a 2nd round grade on Pat Bryant, so you get him in round 3. You got good value for him. You drafted him around later than where he should have gone. So I give the Broncos draft the A-. I would have loved for them to go a little bit heavier on defense, though. I would have loved for them to just draft another cornerback just for a little bit more depth, but I'm not going to nitpick that. This was a really good draft. Next, I got the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm giving them a B. I love their first 2 selections, Omarion Hampton, second best running back in this class by most analysts and draft scouts out there. Trey Harris in the 2nd round. He was an absolute stud for Ole Miss. Some may argue that he was the best receiver in the SEC. Not only is he really good at coming down with those contested catches, but he gives you a little juice after the catch. Jim Harbaugh has a knack for talent. He's one of the better evaluators due to the experience he already has coaching college football the last couple of years at Michigan. And you struck gold getting Lat McConkey in the 2nd round last year. Getting Trey Harris could be you striking gold again. He's going to be playing on the outside. He should be a starter for you unless you want to go with Mike Williams. But with Mike Williams being up there in age, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Trey Harris starting day 1. And he also should have just as good as a rookie season as what we saw out of Lat McConkey. I love the selection of Kyle Kennard. Kyle Kennard was a monster for South Carolina last year. And everybody talks about how good Dylan Stewart was, but Kyle Kennard, not only is he a freak, but he has really good upside. As a pass rusher, I could see him being a consistent double-digit sack guy in this league. And I thought he would have went in the 2nd round. Getting him in the 4th round was an absolute steal. He could be your potential replacement for Joey Bosa. But outside of their first four picks, I wasn't really a big fan of what they did after. Keandre Lambert Smith, he was incredibly underwhelming throughout his college career from Penn State to Auburn. I wasn't really that impressed with him. And some of these other guys like Branson Taylor, more depth on the offensive line. You can move in the guard as well. RJ Mickens, more of a special teams backup kind of guy to me. This was a B draft. The first four picks were good. After that, I wasn't really too thrilled with what the Chargers did, but this was a solid draft. Not great, not bad, just solid. You walked away with two really good players, Omarion Hampton, Trey Harris on offense, and then you get Kyle Kennard. So if you walk away with three Pro Bowl level players, that's a good draft. But outside of these three picks, man, I wasn't too ecstatic about what the Chargers did after. The Kansas City Chiefs, they nailed the draft like they always do. The Chiefs are one of the best teams in the league when it comes to drafting. Josh Simons, you do have some character concerns with him, some injury concerns as well. But if he can stay healthy, he doesn't get into anything off the field, you pretty much found your solution at either left or right tackle. Wherever you want to play him at, he can play either or. He's a swing tackle. You get Norman Lott, who was really good at Tennessee. Outside of James Pierce, he was always wrecking havoc, good against the run. He does have some upside when it comes to getting after the quarterback as well. I'm looking up his numbers right now. I don't want to get his numbers wrong, but I believe he had 5 sacks for Tennessee last year, in 2023, and 4 sacks for Tennessee in 2024. So you get somebody that possibly, I'm not going to say he'll be a Chris Jones replacement. It's hard to replace a guy on the caliber as Chris Jones, but 3-4 years from now, you look back at this Norman Lott pick and you're like, damn, why didn't he go in the first round? Because I kind of had a first round grade on him just with how good he is against the run and production that he had as a defensive tackle. Getting 4 or 5 sacks out of a defensive tackle and to get that in the second round, I think that's very great value. Remember, Mason Graham went in the 5th round. Went 5th overall. And Norman Lott was better getting after the quarterback than what Mason Graham was. Mason Graham is more of like a bona fide run stopper. Norman Lott gives you the best of both worlds. He can be a good rotational pass rusher for you, but he also can be good against the run. Then you get, I don't want to butcher this man's last name, but really good pass rusher out of Louisville, really powerful, really good utilizing his hands. He'll also be a pretty good rotational guy, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you see him get 4 or 5 sacks as a rookie. But my favorite pick that the Chiefs made was getting Jalen Royals. He was on a lot of sleeper lists, incredible route runner, very good hands, but great after the catch. I don't know how they're going to utilize him in this offense with them having Rashee Rice returning from injury. You got Hollywood, Marquise Brown, but I'm pretty sure Andy Reid will find a way to scheme this man into the offense, and he's too good not to get involved in this offense. He will be really good during training camp, and he's going to find a way to get on the field this year. He's just way too good. Normally, when you have a receiver that's as polished as a route runner as what Jalen Royals is, they normally end up seeing the field immediately. One of the more important traits when it comes to evaluating wide receivers for me is looking for guys that can create a lot of separation on their routes. That's what Jalen Royals can do. You can play him outside, you can play him in the slot, however you want to play him. He's going to be a really good receiver for Kansas City. And then you got Brashard Smith in the 7th round. I don't really talk too much about 7th or 6th round selections, but Brashard Smith is really intriguing. He was a running back for SMU, but he spent a lot of time at receiver before he ended up changing positions. Really shifty, has a lot of acceleration. Once he gets into the open field, a lot of guys are going to have a hard time bringing them down from behind. he is a little bit raw as a running back, but Andy Reid, I'm guessing that he could see him being utilized more in the pass game, trying to create mismatches for safeties and linebackers. So essentially, you're getting a running back that more so is a wide receiver for when he's on the field, which is why I think this was a pretty good pick for Kansas City to get him in the 7th round. I see him making the roster and Andy Reid having some fun with him in terms of how he's going to try to get him involved in this offense when it comes to passing situations. Of course, you're not going to have him on the field for a lot of plays. He's not an every down back. He's not going to give you anything when it comes to pass blocking. So he'll kind of be limited in that regard. But overall, this was a great draft. Kansas City didn't really have a lot of picks, but they got the most out of every single pick that they had available to them this year. And lastly, we got the Las Vegas Raiders to round out the rest of the AFC West. This was the best draft class in this division and one of the 5 best draft classes overall. Of course, we know how good Ashton Jeanty was at Boise State, the second best season that we've seen from a running back in college football history, only second to Barry Sanders. Yes, he did play in the Mountain West, but Boise State has normally produced pretty good running backs from Alexander Madison to Doug Martin. Ashton Jeanty is the best of that trio. He has great vision, great contact balance. He's a good receiver as well. And he balled out against Oregon. He also played well against Penn State. Then you get Jack Beck in round 2, who should immediately be a plug-and-play starter for you in this offense. Great hands, great route runner. And then after these first 2 picks, you just continue to just nail guys who should be immediate contributors for you. Darian Porter, I don't know too much about him, but from reading a few scouting reports, he could be an instant impact guy for the Raiders with the big hole that they have to fill at corner, especially with them just recently releasing Jack Jones. You get 2 really good interior offensive linemen, Charles Grant, Caleb Rogers. They could end up competing for playing time to start the year. You get Dante Thornton. Not only does he have great size, but he's one of the fastest receivers in this draft class. So even though the Raiders have a new regime, they still paid homage to the late and great Al Davis. You know how he loves these speedster wide receivers. And just overall, they just continue to get good value. Cam Miller in the 6th round. I'm not going to call it a reach. It more so was a surprise to me because I thought he more so would have been a UDFA due to how under the radar he was. But I had him ranked as my 10th best quarterback during this draft cycle. Really good athlete. If you sit him behind Geno Smith for 2 seasons and that Chip Kelly scheme with how athletic he is, he could turn into a productive starter in this league. This was one of the weaker draft classes that we've seen when it came to quarterbacks. So a guy like Cam Miller, who has a pretty good arm, really good athlete, I wouldn't sleep on him. And the Raiders probably could find a way to get him involved in this offense this year on some design quarterback runs. Chip Kelly could probably cook up a few packages for him as well. The Raiders just got so many potential starters in this draft. It's insane. I don't think no team walked out of the draft with more starters than what the Raiders did. You have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 guys that are possibly going to start for the Raiders, and probably as soon as this year. You won't have to wait too long to see most of these guys on the field. So these are my draft grades for the AFC West. Hey man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. All right, so we finished the AFC. Now we're going to transition to the NFC. The first division we're going to start off with is the NFC East. First, we got the Washington Commanders on deck. I'm giving them a B. They didn't really have a lot of draft capital, so there's only so high of a grade I can give you when you don't have that many picks. But the first 2 picks I love. Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. You're going to play him at right tackle alongside of Laremy Tunsil. He should be really good for you right out the gate. And normally when you are playing right tackle, you normally don't see too many offensive tackles, at least the ones that are good, struggle playing right tackle. Playing left tackle is a little bit of a more difficult transition to make, but playing right tackle, Josh Connolly should be really good right away. I expect him to be an all rookie selection, rather he's first team, second team, because he is really good. I felt he was the third best offensive tackle in this class. Now, if things don't work out with Laremy Tunsil, you could move him to left tackle, but playing right tackle, I think it's the ideal spot for him. Trey Amos is going to be a media starter for you. He's going to be better than Benjamin Let's Give Up a Lot of Touchdowns St. Juice. And after these first two picks, you know, I don't really think the Commanders got a lot of value after, which is why I give them a B. But you're getting two high-end level prospects that should blossom into Pro Bowl level players for you. Once again, Trey Amos was a stud playing for Ole Miss. I didn't really see him get beat too many times. I think that he also has scheme versatility. Rather you want to play a lot of man or a lot of zone, he's going to be a really good fit in Dan Quinn's system. The Dallas Cowboys had a really good draft. I'm giving them an A-. Tyler Booker scares me. I was listening to the interview that he did with Michael Parsons and Darius Slay, and he said what he loves the most about football is taking the love of the game against whoever he's lining up against. When he makes the opposing defensive lineman that he's going up against lose his passion for the game of football, that's what makes him love the game. And just hearing that statement, I believe that the Dallas Cowboys got another future Hall of Famer on their hands, getting Tyler Booker. Although you don't see a lot of offensive guards getting drafted as high as what Tyler Booker did, he was really good at Alabama. He's a freak athlete. This dude is a psycho. I can't say it enough. He's an absolute psycho. He's the kind of offensive lineman that everybody should want on their team. Nice guy. He's a teddy bear off the field, but on the field, you don't want to be lining up against this guy. And I can't wait to see the battles that he's going to have with Jalen Carter for years to come. Siobhan Revell Jr., I had a first-round grade on him. If it wasn't for the medicals, I felt he would have been a first-round lock. You get him in round 2. You already got Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland. You can play him in a slot, but if you can't retain Deron Bland, I know he is due for a contract extension coming up, I believe. He'll be a really good replacement if you do have to play him on the outside. Donovan Ezraku, though, is my favorite pick that the Cowboys made. I was shocked that he fell to the 3rd round. I thought that he would have been a top 15 pick. He was an absolute monster at Boston College. Not only was he good at getting after the quarterback, but he was a monster in the run game as well. His stats last year were video game like 16.5 sacks, 21 tackles for loss. He was a first-team All-American. How the hell did he fall to the 3rd round? I don't know. I don't really have an answer for you. I think these general managers were tripping. But your first 3 picks, you knocked out the park. Not only are you getting really good starters, but you're getting potentially all-pro kind of talents. And the Cowboys have always been one of the best teams in the league when it comes to drafting and player development. You got 3 instant contributors for you this season. Now, getting Jaden Blue in the 5th round, I wasn't really that high on him. In a deep running back class, you could have went with Damian Martinez. You could have went with so many better backs than Jaden Blue. On Johnny Cornelius, though, he'll be a really good tackle, but if you don't want to play him at tackle, you want to move him to guard, he'll be good as well. Good size, really good athlete. You get Phil Marfa around 7. He's more of a power back. I don't really know if he's as good as some of the other running backs you could have gotten, but you do get him in round 7, so you can't be too picky. I'll argue that Phil Maffa is better than Jaden Blue, and you may push back against that if you're a Cowboys fan because you took Jaden Blue first, but Phil Maffa had a pretty good career at Clemson. Not super dynamic, but he's more of an old school throwback kind of back where he's north and south. He's going to break a lot of tackles. He's going to be good in short yardage situations. So I give the Dallas Cowboys an A minus. The only reason why I didn't give them an A plus is just that after your first 3 picks, you didn't really come away with too many other prospects that could turn into high level starters. If you would have just got one more, like a Damian Martinez, you would have gotten an A plus. But this was a really good draft, and this was a draft where I could end up looking like a dumbass around the same time next year when I go back and I look back at these grades with how big of an impact Ezra, Ravel, and Booker are going to have right out the gates in their rookie season. The Philadelphia Eagles, Harry Roseman was cooking like he always does in the draft. Jahad Campbell is built like the black version of Hercules, has a really good physique, really good frame, arguably the best linebacker in this draft class. Then you get Andrew Makuba in the second round, who he's a really good coverage safety. I didn't see him give up too many big plays over the top during his collegiate career. He has a high football IQ. He just seems to just know where the ball is going at all times. He just has really good instincts. Smile Munden, I was surprised that he slipped to round 5. He was also another player that, like Makuba, although they played 2 different positions, he was always flying towards the ball, and he was one of the better players on Georgia's defense. And we know how Howie likes to just always get these Georgia defensive players when you're struggling to figure out who to draft. Just go Georgia. Kyle McCord, he could be a really good backup. I thought that he would have went a lot higher. I thought he probably would have been like a day 2 selection. You just got so much value in this draft. You didn't reach for guys. You actually got guys that went a lot lower than what they should have. I really thought that Small Munden would have at least been like a round 2, round 3 pick, because he was my 3rd rated linebacker in this class. So you get Jahad Campbell, you get Small Munden. If you get any injuries, any of these guys have to step up. They should be able to be really good contributors for you. And you got a lot of good depth. You go back-to-back offensive tackles in the 6th round. You get an edge rusher and Antoine Powell-Rayland, who I think does have a little bit of upside to be a really good rotational pass rusher. So this is an A-plus draft for Philadelphia. They got 4 or 5 high-level prospects that could turn into really good long-term starters. The New York Giants, I give them a B+. I would have given them a higher grade, like an A- or an A, if they didn't trade back up into the 1st round to get Jackson Dart. Getting Abdul Carter was a no-brainer. We know he should turn into one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. He has freakish athletic traits. He has a high motor. He should be one of those generational kind of pass rushers like a Myles Garrett or a Nick Bosa. He should come in and give you immediate production right away. 8-9 sacks is what I'm expecting out of him. But Jackson Dart, though, that Florida game, I just can't get it out my head. And not just the Florida game, but anytime Ole Miss played against any of the best teams on their schedule, Jackson Dart did not play that well. You also are going to have to sit him for a year where there's a chance that Brian Dable and Joe Schoen aren't even going to be around next year for Jackson Dart's 2nd season, therefore hindering his development because he's going to have to learn a new system. He's going to have to learn a new head coach. We all know that stability on the coaching staff is key to a young quarterback reaching their potential. And you could have gotten Jackson Dart in the 2nd round, even if you didn't trade up to get him. Then you get Darius Alexander, one of the more highly sought after defensive tackle prospects in this class, at least with how he was talked about in the eyes of the national media. There was some conversation that maybe he could have went round 2 to the Dallas Cowboys. It seemed like they had a lot of interest in him. He could be a immediate plug and play guy, and if not, 2-3 years down the road, he could be a really good sidekick, the sexy Dexy. Cam Scottaboo, one of my favorite running backs in this class, doesn't have top end speed. If he was to run the 40, he wouldn't blow you away, but his game speed is a lot faster than what his 40 time may indicate. I think he runs somewhere in like the 4 or 5 range, but he's really good after contact. He's a bruiser. He has really good hands. I could see him and Tyron Tracy being a really good running back combination, a really good running back duo. I could see him being better than Tyron Tracy. Tyron Tracy had a really good rookie season, better than what you would expect for somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience playing running back. With Cam Scottaboo, if you play fantasy football, he definitely is somebody that you should pick up. He should get a lot of touches this year. He's more of like a workhorse back. He's a north and south kind of runner. You're not going to run a lot of outside zone with Cam Scottaboo. But if you do, he definitely has a good enough speed where he can get out to the edge. But I love Cam Scottaboo. He was one of my favorite prospects in this draft, and he was really fun to watch at Arizona State. He's dragging guys. He's running guys over. He plays with a lot of heart. I don't think he'll have a long career, though. I think that he probably will last like 4 or 5 years in this league just due to his tough playing style. But this is definitely the kind of running back that you want on your team, not just from a talent standpoint, but from a worth ethic standpoint, a leadership standpoint. He's a high character guy. He definitely is going to be fun to watch in this Giants offense. But after the Cam Scottaboo pick, I wasn't too high on the other selections that the Giants made. Although they're not bad. Marcus Mabu, like he could be a really good depth piece, a really good offensive guard possibly for you. You got more depth on that offensive line. Outside of that, I don't really think they got too much great value. But I do love the Abdul Carter pick, the Darius Alexander pick, and Cam Scottaboo. So I give them a B+. They would have gotten a lot higher of a grade if they just would have, possibly traded back into the first round for some more help on offense, maybe a receiver, maybe another corner. But trading up for Jackson Dart in the first round, I just don't really understand it when you need guys who can come in and have immediate impact for you. And Jackson Dart is going to be able to do that. These are my NFC East draft grades. All right, I want to talk about my draft grades for all the teams in the NFC North. The Chicago Bears, we'll start with them first. They get an A-. This was a pretty good draft. Colson Loveland, I felt Tyler Warren was a lot better, but I understand why Ben Johnson went with Colson Loveland. He kind of has a similar skill set to Brock Bowers. He's not Brock Bowers, but he's like a great value brand version of him. You can line him out wide at receiver. He moves really fast for his size as well. Then you get Luther Burden in the second round. I had a first round grade on him. He's going to have a really productive rookie season. Great route runner. Gets off the line with ease with the amount of release packages that he has. And he's really shifty, especially after the catch. He should have went a lot higher. I guess he had some off the field issues that dropped his stock a little bit, but if it wasn't for them, I have no doubts that he would have been a first round pick. And now you have him, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, alongside of Cole Kmet, Colson Loveland. You've improved the offensive line of free agency. They pretty much have given Caleb Williams a dream team in terms of the supporting cast that he has around him. You get another offensive lineman in the second round who probably could be a potential starter for you, depending on, if he's able to dethrone Braxton Jones. But if not, you got a good depth piece. Shamar Turner in the second round, I don't hate it. Ruben Hippolyte, though. This was my favorite pick by the Chicago Bears. When you turn on the film, the guy was just flying to the ball. He's really good against the run. He's not that great against the pass, but his pass coverage definitely has a lot of room to improve. But if he just slightly improves his pass coverage, he could be one of the better linebackers in the NFL. He just has a nose for the football. He's a really sound tackler. I didn't see too many guys breaking out of Ruben Hippolyte's tackles. So when he gets his hands on you, you're not breaking out of his grasp. And then you get a really good running back out of Rutgers. I can't pronounce his name, but he was really productive playing for Rutgers last year. One of the more productive running backs in college football last season. So the Bears got really good value with the majority of their picks. I'm not the biggest fan of Shamar Turner. I just don't really know what it is with these Texas A&M guys. They just are more so like disappointments at the next level. I don't know if it's a scheme thing or whatnot, but they had a really good draft in terms of what they did with their first two picks, Colson Loveland, Luther Burden. Then you get Ruben Hippolyte in the 4th round. I think he's going to be an absolute gem for Chicago. So I'm gonna stick with giving them an A minus. I was about to change it to an A plus, but I'm gonna stick with A minus just because I don't feel like they walked away with a lot of guys who are going to be like high level starters in this league, but they walked away with some really good pieces. Loveland, Burden, Hippolyte. I can see them being really productive for the Bears. The Detroit Lions had a really confusing draft. Tyleik Williams, understandable. Really good against the run. I don't know how much production you'll get from him from a pass rush standpoint. But then in round 2, you get Tate Ratledge, who, I mean, this dude could have been a starter if he would have went to a team that was in more need of better offensive line play. He could immediately challenge for some starting playing time as a rookie. But outside of Tyleik Williams and Tate Ratledge, man, I don't know what they were thinking. Getting Isaac Tesla in the 3rd round, I thought he would have been a round 6, round 7 kind of guy. Dominic Lovett, I don't know why you would draft any Georgia wide receiver with how much that position struggled last year. I do like the Boise State edge rusher. He could be a really good player for them. I'm not expecting him to be good right away, but with a few years of development, he could turn into a pretty productive player. Miles Frazier, you get some more depth on the offensive line, but getting Isaac Tesla in the 3rd round when you could have walked away with a guy like a Torrey Horton who could have given you immediate impact at receiver than what Isaac Tesla is going to give you. I didn't really understand what Brad Holmes saw in Isaac Tesla to the point where he felt he had to draft him in round 3. He definitely would have been available in round 6 or round 7. I wasn't really too high on him. I didn't really get why they felt the need to do that. And just overall, I just feel like this was a draft by Detroit that was okay, but they could have did a lot better. They did reach for a few of these guys. Like Dominic Lovett probably would have been a UDFA with how last season went for him at Georgia, and Isaac Tesla was more of like a round 6, round 7 kind of guy to me. The Green Bay Packers, they've always been one of the best teams in the league for a very long time at drafting. Normally they go either corner or defensive line, pass rusher, offensive line in the 1st round. This year was completely different, though. They actually changed their philosophy. Normally, they wouldn't go receiver this early. Well, they did with Matthew Golden, and it was a great pick. One of the biggest steals in the draft this year. Matthew Golden, you could have made the argument that he was wide receiver 1 over Ted McMillan. He's a better route runner. He also is a lot faster than Ted McMillan. He gives you more after the catch. Immediately, to me, he's the Green Bay Packers wide receiver 1. He's the most talented receiver that they have on this team. And they have a lot of good receivers. You got Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. But what separates Matthew Golden from the other receivers that Green Bay currently has is that he can do it all. He can be a good deep threat with his speed, how fast he is, pushing defenses vertically, and also what he gives you after the catch. with some guys like Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, they're more so like either really good possession receivers, really good yak threats. They're not really receivers that just have an overall well-rounded game that equates to the skill set that Matthew Golden has. If you play fantasy football, you should be taking Matthew Golden really early. He gives you like wide receiver 2 with low end, wide receiver 1 upside with Jordan Love. He could have the most productive rookie season out of all of the rookie wideouts out of this class. Anthony Belton, you get him in the second round out of NC State. I don't know what it is with NC State and their offensive tackles, but for the last couple of years, they have produced some athletic freaks at offensive tackle. This man, not only is he a behemoth with incredible size, but he moves really, really well. And I don't know if he'll be a plug-and-play guy for them. I felt like their offensive tackle spots were pretty good. But, I mean, look, if they drafted him in the second round, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up taking somebody's starting job with how well he played at NC State. And normally I don't pay attention to offensive linemen like that, but Anthony Belton is just way too freakishly athletic to ignore. Anytime you watched any NC State game and you saw him at offensive tackle, this dude was freaking moving. He was a damn freight train. Savion Williams, he's like a hybrid receiver slash running back. He's like a wide back. That's the new terminology for these kinds of players that play both RB and receiver. He's a Deebo Samuel type. I don't know how LaFleur is going to use him in the offense, but I do like him as a player. He's just one of those good football players, so I'm not mad at this pick. And then you get Warren Brinson in round 6. He should be a really good rotational guy on that defense. He should have a 10-year career in the league. More so a pretty good run stopper. You may not ever get a lot of production from him when it comes to getting after the quarterback, but this was a really good draft that the Packers put together. They always draft really well. I give them an A-. And the last team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings, who I gave a B-. I love Donovan Jackson. He was one of the best offensive guards in this class, and with how things just completely fell apart with the Vikings offensive line at the tail end of last season, getting Donovan Jackson definitely was a need, and he's going to be an instant impact starter for them. But after him, I wasn't really too excited about the direction the Vikings went after him. In the 5th round, you got Kobe King out of Penn State. He had some really inconsistent film. At times, he was really good for Penn State. Sometimes he was kind of like, a little bit of a liability. He can get pushed around when offensive linemen can get their hands on him. He doesn't really do a good job of disengaging from blocks, in my opinion. But the Vikings, this draft wasn't bad. You just didn't have a lot of picks. So I can only give you as high as a grade. I can't really give you a higher grade than this one. If you would have had some more selections, then I probably could have bumped you up to a B+. But when you only got like 1, 2, 3, 4, like only a handful of picks, I don't really think you're walking away with a lot of high level starters outside of Donovan Jackson. But we'll see. But these are my draft grades for the NFC North. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Moving on to my draft grades for the NFC South. This division as a whole, everybody drafted pretty well. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I give them a B. You already were loaded at wide receiver. You had Jalen McMillan, who had a really productive rookie season. You got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. But now with Emeka Egbuka and Tess Johnson, you have the deepest receiving room in the NFL. If one person goes down, it's next man up, and you should get equal the amount of production that you would get with whoever they're replacing. Emeka Egbuka, he's had a storied career at Ohio State. He's been one of college football's most productive receivers over the last couple of years. He has great hands. He's a savvy route runner. He has a high football IQ. He's pretty good after the catch as well. My only question is, who is he going to start over? And that's a good question to have. Probably Jalen McMillan. But even if he doesn't start, let's say he ends up being Mike Evans' replacement when he ends up retiring and he has to sit on the bench for a year or two. This is a good problem to have. And I don't mind them getting Emeka Egbuka in round one, although it's not an area that they desperately needed to address. With how well they've drafted over these last couple of years, you got so much talent everywhere where you really can't go wrong. Whichever position they chose to go with in the first round, Emeka Egbuka can be a high-level receiver in the NFL. I think that he probably ends up being a top 5 wide receiver or better if he reaches his potential. Benjamin Morrison would have been a first-round pick if he never got injured last year. He missed 10 games. He's a really aggressive press corner. Jacob Parrish is also a really good press corner as well. Todd Bowles seems to like these aggressive, in-your-face corners. The same issue with Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish kind of has. Once you beat their press coverage, they kind of become hit or miss in coverage after. But Benjamin Morrison, though, with the size that he has and the athleticism that he possesses, if you can get him healthy, I expect him to have a really good rookie season. He also is a pretty good tackler. He's a better tackler than what Jacob Parrish is. Jacob Parrish is kind of like tackling, kind of secondary to him. And then you get David Walker, Elijah Roberts, more depth to add on that defense, especially when it comes to that pass rush. The Atlanta Falcons had surprisingly one of the best drives of anybody this year, and they didn't really have too many picks. You get Jalen Walker, 15th overall. You can move him around a bevy of different positions on your defense. You got James Pierce Jr. in the back end of the first round, who you traded back up to get with the Rams. And yeah, they might have given up too many draft picks for James Pierce, especially with the red flags that he has. He kind of is like a boom or bust prospect, but I expect James Pierce to be a really good player. Personally, I'm a lot higher on him than what most were. I felt he was worthy of a top 15 pick. Really productive getting after the quarterback at Tennessee. And not just was he productive against the pass, but he was just a playmaker on that Vols defense. I remember he had a forced fumble that he caused against Florida in the red zone. He can be a really disruptive player. And if Jalen Walker and James Pierce both live up to their potential, then the Falcons are going to have one of the best pass rushing duos in the league for years to come. The pass rush has been the Achilles heel for the Falcons ever since they had Jonathan Abraham. And when they had that 15.5 sack season, the year they choked that 28-3 to the Patriots from Vic Beasley, pass rush has been something that has been non-existent for the Falcons for a very long time. So I don't have an issue with them giving up a little bit extra to get James Pierce. Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman, these two guys are studs. Xavier Watts, you can make the argument that he was the best safety in this class, has really good instincts, good ball skills, has a knack for making plays. Billy Bowman, top 2 coverage safety in this class. At Oklahoma, he was as shut down as what it can get. He's a ball hawk. Not really good against the run, but from a coverage standpoint, he immediately can be a plug-in guy for Atlanta. Same thing for Xavier Watts. All 4 of their first couple of selections should easily be day one starters for them. I love Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman. I feel if they both end up starting, that they should be first-team all-rookie selections. That's how good both of these two guys are. So the Falcons, despite not having a lot of picks, they got a lot of good value, which is why I give them an A+. The Carolina Panthers, they also had a really good draft as well. I'm giving them an A+ grade. Tech McMillan, either you love him or you hate him. I love him for Carolina. He's a big body wide receiver, which is going to make it easier for Bryce Young to get the ball to him. With Bryce Young being undersized, when you have a wide receiver that's 6'5", 209, it's pretty hard to miss him. With the length that he has, the range that he has, all you just got to do is put the ball in his proximity. He's going to come away with it. I did have some concerns about his burst off the line. Sometimes it just seemed like he was coasting, but he is a dominant 50-50 ball receiver. But he's more than just that. He can move the chains. He can be Bryce Young's safety blanket in third down situations. He profiles a lot like Michael Pittman and Drake London, although he doesn't move as well as what Drake London does. He doesn't really have a lot of agility. He's not really going to give you much after the catch. But if you're just looking for a big body receiver, you tell Bryce just to throw it downfield when nobody's open. Ted McMillan is your guy. Nick Scourton, Princely, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. I think it's Imani. You see, there I go, butchering his last name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. But Princely was really good at Ole Miss last year. And Nick Scourton, he was the best Texas A&M defensive lineman in this class. There was a good amount of them. He was the best of the bunch. So with the Panthers' first 3 picks, not only did they get guys who are going to come in and have immediate impact right away, but these should be really high-level starters. And Ted McMillan, he could have the biggest impact out of any wide receiver in this class outside of Travis Hunter. I wouldn't really consider Travis Hunter a receiver. He's more so an athlete. So their first 3 picks, they nailed them. They got what they needed. You got a wide receiver, a true number 1 to give Bryce Young. You got 2 really good pass rushers, not just with their potential, but also with what they could bring you in their rookie seasons. Probably you get 5 sacks out of both of these guys each. And Trevor Etienne, he's going to be a really good backup option behind Chuba Hubbard. They also drafted Jonathan Brooks, but with him going through another injury, who knows if he ever is going to end up becoming the player that the Panthers envision him becoming. You get Latham Ransom, who I don't think he's great in coverage, but he's really good in run support. He got beaten over the top a handful of times last season. And then you get Jimmy Horn Jr., who should be the replacement for Adam Thielen in the slot when he ends up retiring. He could end up de-seating Adam Thielen. I expect Adam Thielen to regress this year with him getting up there in age. You got to expect him to regress eventually. You can't fight off Father Time for as long as what he has. And if he gets injured, Jimmy Horn probably ends up running away with the job. Despite him being like only 5'8", 5'9", he's pretty well built for his size. He doesn't really fall down easily. He's an incredible deep threat, but he also is really good after the catch. He can make you miss. He runs solid and crisp routes. So this was a really good drive class that Dan Morgan and company put together. It's funny what you can do when your owner gets his hands out of the cookie jar for a change. The New Orleans Saints, their draft wasn't bad, but I don't think it was great neither. Kelvin Banks was a great pickup for them with the 9th overall selection. With the retirement of Ryan Ramczyk, you were definitely going to have to find a replacement for him. He was widely considered at one point to be the best tackle in this class, and some may argue he still is. Tyler Shuck, I really don't know about it. Like, Tyler Shuck had some really interesting film. I put at that. When he's at his best, you definitely can see why the Saints fell in love with him. He can throw from all kinds of different arm angles. He has a really strong arm. But the downside with Tyler Shuck is I see a lot of Will Levis in his game. There's moments when he just makes he just has turnovers that make you go, what the fuck were you doing? It was one turnover he had. I forgot who it was, but I don't know if he tried to throw the ball away, if the ball got knocked out of his hands. I don't know what it was, but I guess he tried to like toss or pitch the ball forward, and I can't even explain the play. And that play kind of epitomizes the Tyler Shuck experience. Outside of the few plays that he has when he turns the ball over, and there just is unexcusable turnovers that he has. You know, when he's playing within the structure of the offense, you know, he's a pretty solid quarterback. And yes, he is 26 years old. I remember when he was the backup of Oregon back when I was a 10th grader in high school. He's been around the block, but age shouldn't really mean anything. There's quarterbacks playing well into their 40s, so I don't really knock him too much for the age. I just more so knock him for the inexplicable turnovers, which is why I see a lot of Will Levis when I watch Tyler Shuck's film, but I still felt they should have went with Shador Sanders. He would have been much better than Tyler Shuck, but he's a good athlete, great arm. The potential definitely is there, although you kind of feel like he's maxed out his potential. He's somewhat like a Brandon Whedon. I think that's a really good comp for him. Danny Stutzman was the best linebacker in the draft, in my opinion. I mean, he had an incredible career at Oklahoma. He was everywhere. He was making tackles against the run. He's also pretty good in coverage. Then you get Devin Neal in the 6th round. He could be the RB2 immediately behind Alvin Kamara. Really good after contact. Has really good bursts. He's not the most agile guy in the world. He's not going to make you miss with a lot of moves. But he was one of the better running backs in a very loaded running back class. In a normal running back class, he probably is like a RB5 or better. So I give the Saints a B minus. You know, the Tyler Shuck pick to me over Shador. I just can't get behind it, man. I really can't. But you should walk away with at least 3-4 guys out of this drive who should turn into really good starters. Kelvin Banks has like all pro potential to where he could be one of the best tackles in the league. And Danny Stutzman should be a 10-year starter in the NFL. So these are my NFC South draft grades. Now, lastly, I have my NFC West draft grades. We're going to start off with the 49ers. I give them a B. They had a lot of draft capital, and you know, they went heavy early on addressing the pass rush and the interior of their defensive line. Markel Williams should become a pretty productive pass rusher. I don't know if he'll become a superstar, but I can see him being a 7-year, 8-year starter in this league where you consistently get 7 sacks or more with Markel Williams. He was always making big plays for Georgia and their biggest moments. I believe he was the guy who injured Quinn Ewers, if I'm not mistaken, when they had played Texas the first go around. Then you got Alfred Collins, who has been pretty productive throughout his career for Texas. Really good against the run. He also can be really good against the pass as well. And he could become a really good interior defensive lineman for the 49ers. You're looking at, if he reaches his potential, he's giving you 7-8 sacks out of that defensive tackle position, which is outstanding. And then you get to their other couple of picks right after. Run that back. Lastly, I have my draft grades for the NFC West. We're going to start with the San Francisco 49ers. They had a lot of draft capital. I give them a B. Markel Williams and Alfred Collins were their 2 best selections. Markel Williams, you're expecting him to have immediate impact on your pass rush right away with how productive he was at Georgia. It seemed like he did nothing but come up in big moments for Georgia. He had a really good game against Texas. Alfred Collins, who happened to play on Texas, and Georgia saw him a lot. Anytime Alfred Collins was going up against Georgia, he had some really good performances on film. And if he reaches his potential, he could be one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL, good against the run, has a lot of pass rush potential. Now, after these first 2 picks, that's when things kind of get a little bit murky for the 49ers. You know, you go linebacker and corner, which Nick Martin could turn into a pretty good linebacker, although he is undersized. Jordan Watkins, I like this selection. He was pretty good at Ole Miss. Really good hands. He could turn into a really good deep threat in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Jordan James, you should never question when the 49ers draft a running back. With Kyle Shanahan's scheme, you can just plug and play anybody. Curtis Wark, though, he'll be a really good backup for the 49ers. I love him a lot. I wanted the Steelers to draft him after we couldn't get Shador. He played through a freaking ACL injury, and I believe he suffered this injury like early during the season. You got to be a tough son of a gun to play a whole entire season on a torn ACL. I don't even know how the hell that was possible, but he just earned my respect with that. And if, let's say, worst case scenario, something does happen to Brock Purdy, okay, and you don't have Mac Jones available, I'm guessing Mac Jones won't be there for long. It looks like he's going down the journeyman path at this point. Curtis worked with some development. He'll be a really good safety net if something does happen to Brock Purdy. Really accurate, makes good decisions with the ball. And what's scary about Curtis Work is if he was as good as what he was playing for Indiana, leading them to the CFP on a torn ACL, I can only imagine how good Curtis Work is fully healthy. So overall, with all the picks that the 49ers had, you probably walked away with, 4 or 5 really good starters. Markel Williams, Alfred Collins probably have the highest potential out of everybody. I would have loved for them to invest it more into the offensive line. Once again, they kind of continue to ignore that position, which is why I give them a B and not a higher grade. With how the offensive line has kind of played these last couple of years, with some of these positions, do you really need another running back? Although we know whoever plays in this system, they immediately get a little bit of a boost due to the Kyle Shanahan scheme. But I felt you could have passed on a safety and drafted another offensive lineman. They didn't get an offensive lineman until the 7th round. So, you could have used a few more picks to get 2 or 3 offensive linemen, give you a little bit of depth, and maybe you walk away with a high level one at guard or something like that. It just was a little bit confusing how they invested heavy on the interior of their defensive line, but they kind of ignored investing heavy into the interior of their offensive line. So they get a B for me. The Arizona Cardinals get an A. They had one of the best draft classes out of anybody. Walter Nolan is going to be an absolute stud. He had the highest potential out of any defensive tackle in this class. He's a freak athlete, really twitchy, and every time you watch Ole Miss play, Walter Nolan was just absolutely wrecking havoc. He's good against the run. He's good against the pass. If he ends up panning out and being the player that the Cardinals expect him to be, I feel he can be DeForest Buckner. Then you get Will Johnson in the 2nd round. The only reason he fell out of the first was due to medical concerns. So he had a knee surgery that required doctors taking cartilage out of his healthy knee and putting it into his unhealthy knee. So you don't really know how long he's going to last in the league. But I do know one thing. For as long as the Cardinals can keep him healthy, he's going to be one of the best corners in the league. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Surtain. He is a fundamentally sound corner. Will Johnson's film is what you use to teach younger corners how to play the position. Really good footwork. Didn't really see him get beat too often, although some scouts may argue that his 2024 film was a step back from the film that he had in 2023. I don't really care. Will Johnson is going to be a stud. He was a top 10 player in this draft, and I cannot believe that the medicals made him fall this far into the draft. If he can play this year, he should have been a 1st-round pick. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. You get Jordan Burch in round 3, then Cody Simon in round 4. Cody Simon was a monster at Ohio State. You talk about somebody that was flying around like he was the damn devil. Like he gave no F's. He was just laying his body on the line. Not super athletic, but just a really good football player. And Ohio State produces some really good linebackers that have high football IQ. Tommy Eichenberg, who got drafted by the Raiders, I believe last year, he was pretty good. Like Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg kind of are a little bit the same. I don't necessarily think that Cody Simon is as bad in pass coverage as what Tommy Eichenberg was, but against the run, he just has a nose for just sniffing out runs. He causes a lot of havoc plays. Havoc plays are when you get tackles for losses, or you just cause a lot of mayhem behind the line of scrimmage. That's what Cody Simon did at Ohio State. It's like as soon as the ball got snapped, he was instantly making the play. And then after these four selections, that's when things kind of got a little bit for me for Arizona. I couldn't give them an A plus because they took Denzel Burke in the 5th round. Denzel Burke was barbecue chicken for Ohio State secondary last year. Like against Oregon, he was getting roasted. The first time they played Oregon, he was getting roasted. And anytime Ohio State's defense did give up a big play, which there weren't too many, Denzel Burke was mainly the main catalyst of it. Then you get Hayden Conner, an offensive guard in the 6th round, who possibly could mold into a solid starter. This was a pretty good draft. If it wasn't for you taking Denzel Burke, I would have given you an A+, but there's no way you could have watched Denzel Burke play last year and justified taking him with a mid-round selection. He definitely was a back-end, round 6, round 7 kind of guy. Like, the athleticism is there, the tools are there, and they did get pretty serviceable production out of Marco Wilson, but Denzel Burke was not good. So I kind of bumped them down a little bit for drafting him, but this was a really good draft, and I'm excited to see what Walter Nolan and Will Johnson do as rookies. These guys should immediately be contending for Defensive Player of the Year. The Los Angeles Rams, I'm giving them a B-. You do get kudos for getting an extra 1st-round pick out of the Atlanta Falcons, which probably will be a top 15 selection. Terrence Ferguson, though, in the 2nd round. Sean McVay knows something that I don't, but I wasn't really that blown away with Terrence Ferguson. I felt you could have probably got him a little bit later in the draft, in my opinion. He's a pretty good run blocker. You know, he has pretty reliable hands, but when you drop the tight end this high, though, you're kind of expecting a lot more. I feel like Elijah Arroyo, Heron Fannin were a lot better than Terrence Ferguson, so I felt you could have got him in like round 4. Josiah Stewart, though, I love Josiah Stewart. Go back and watch his tape against USC. He was so dominant in that game that he forced USC to have to bench their starting left tackle in the 2nd half. He was like Lawrence Taylor reincarnated in that game, and I expect him to have immediate, instant impact on this Rams defense, which is already loaded when it comes to the talent that they have on the defensive line. You get Jarquez Hunter, who's a really good power back. Chris Paul Jr., though, he's tied for Josiah Stewart for being my favorite pick that the Rams made in this draft class. I love Chris Paul a lot. He was really productive at Ole Miss last year. I think that he's pretty good in coverage, has pretty good instincts. He just has a pretty good feel for the linebacker position. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see an injury or two occur at linebacker for the Rams. He ends up getting the starting nod and he just runs away with it. I thought he would have went a lot higher than round 5. I had a round 2, round 3 grade on him. So the Rams, I give them a B- just because, you know, I'm going to give Sean McVay the benefit of the doubt that he saw something special in Terrence Ferguson that I don't, but I wasn't necessarily blown away with what he did at Oregon. And then Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round, you could have gotten some better backs than him. You could have gotten a Damian Martinez. Like, there are so many better backs than Jarquez Hunter in a very loaded running back class where I didn't even have him in my top 10. I had him in my top 15. Lastly, we got the Seattle Seahawks. They had the 3rd best draft this year. They nailed pretty much every single pick they made. Like, their first 5 picks are going to be really highly productive starters. Gray Zabel was their first pick, offensive lineman in the 1st round. He's probably going to play guard, which is definitely a position of need that the Seahawks desperately needed. Their offensive line has been atrocious for a decade plus. Then you get Nick Amaniwari out of South Carolina. I know I mispronounced that, but this dude is a freak. He can play anywhere on your defense. He can play slot corner if you need him. He can play single high if you need him to be. He's really good in coverage. He has a ton of athleticism. He's really good against the run. He can do it all. Then you get Elijah Arroyo. You double up in the 2nd round. He is a really good tight end prospect. Really good speed, really good hands. He was Cam Ward's safety blanket last season at Miami. Then you get Jalen Milroe in the third round. Now, this was really interesting. Mike McDonald, with him briefly spending time as the Ravens defensive coordinator, he saw how unstoppable Lamar Jackson was going up against him every day in practice and watching him on the sidelines. He probably is looking at Jalen Milroe in that same capacity to where if we can sit him for 2 seasons and help him develop as a passer, eventually, let's say that Sam Darnold gets you to the playoffs. He puts up good numbers like 27-10, 25-10, but you keep up coming up short. You can do something similarly to what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes after his first season. They gave him the starting nod. They traded away Alex Smith to the Washington Commanders. You could see the same thing happen with Jalen Milroe and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold could be good enough for 2 seasons to where you have enough success, but you're looking for more. You insert Jalen Milroe, and all of a sudden, you go from being a playoff team to being a Super Bowl contender, because that's the kind of upside that Jalen Milroe possesses. The NFC doesn't have a lot of aliens at quarterback compared to the AFC, where you have Mahomes, you got Josh Allen, you got Lamar, you got Justin Herbert. You just have these super uber athletic quarterbacks, to where in the NFC you don't really have that. And Jalen Milroe instantly is one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the league. Despite not taking a single snap, you're going to find ways to get him on the field. Just because he's going to be sitting behind Sam Darnold doesn't mean that you're not going to find a way to put that elite athleticism to use. If he is just as fast or faster than Lamar, then that's even scarier than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson isn't the power runner that Jalen Milroe is. Jalen Milroe can beat you with elusiveness. He can beat you with a bevy of spin moves, juke moves, but he also can run through you. He's listed as like 225 pounds. And you have to think that the Seahawks would probably add some more weight on his frame. So you get him to 235, running 4.3 and faster. You don't want to see that in the open field if you're a defensive back. Somebody running at you with this kind of speed, built like a freaking linebacker. The average linebacker in the league weighs 230 pounds. Fred Warner is considered to be the best linebacker right now, right? He's 230. Jalen Milroe, you get him to 235, he pretty much outweighs everybody on the field outside of defensive linemen. And you're going to get tired of tackling this tank throughout the course of a 60-minute game. And if you can just make him a somewhat decent passer to the level that Jalen Hurts is, the Seahawks are going to have a transcendent level quarterback that can elevate their chances of going from a playoff team to a Super Bowl contender. Then you get Riley Mills in the middle portion of the draft. He was really productive at Notre Dame. He can get after the quarterback. He's good against the run. I don't know if he'll ever turn into a stout defensive tackle where he's like an 8+ sack guy, but I can see him giving you like 3, 4, maybe 5 sacks a year. He's really good against the run. But my favorite pick outside of Jalen Milroe and Elijah Arroyo, was Torrey Horton. This was my favorite receiver in this class, and I cannot believe that Seattle got him in the 5th round. When you watch the film of Torrey Horton at Colorado State, go watch his film against Colorado from 2023. I call him the Colorado Killer. I didn't know who the hell this brother was until that Colorado game when he put the world on notice. In 2023 against the Buffs, it seemed like every damn time they threw the ball his way, he was making a big play. He was killing Colorado every single snap in that game. He has great hands. He's a really good route runner. And he missed the majority of last year due to an injury. So for him to come off that injury running 4.3, he's a lot faster than that. You're getting not just a really good possession receiver, but a really good deep threat. He should immediately be contending for legit playing time this year. If you're playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, you need to draft Torrey Horton. Like, this dude is an absolute stud. His production, his last couple of years at Colorado State was off the freaking charts. And then, if you weren't already, nailing your first couple of picks, You double back in round 7, and you get Damian Martinez, who was really good at Miami. He's not really elusive, but he's really good at breaking tackles, has really good vision. The Seahawks came away with 4 or 5 players who not just are going to be long-term starters in this league, but Torrey Horton, Jalen Milroe, Elijah Arroyo, Nick Amenawari, Gray Zabel, they all have all-pro level potential. Like, I love Torrey Horton. I'm a little bit biased to a fault with him, but I really believe he's going to turn into one of the better receivers in the NFL. And for the Seahawks to get him in the 5th round was an absolute steal. But these are my NFC West draft grades, and this is it for my 2025 NFL draft grades as a whole. This has gone on for 2 hours long. This is way longer than I expected it to be. But if you made it to this point, I appreciate you. Give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode.